This is John Hauser, and welcome back to my channel. The name of my channel is Free Advice, and one of the things that I'm notorious for doing, just ask my kids, is to give out free advice. But I'm going to make a series of short videos on my experiences from 1971 to 1972, my experiences in South Vietnam. Now, the reason I'm going to do this is a couple. Number one, for my own benefit. I got a story I need to tell. And number two, this will establish just a video legacy of things that I remember so I can forget them. I don't know about you, but I keep a journal, and sometimes I write things down because by writing them down, I don't have to remember them anymore. I can say I wrote it down, I forgot it. But I am going to do a series of short videos on South Vietnam, my experiences. On the wall behind me are some pictures that were made. These pictures were taken by a gentleman who volunteered to become the photographer for our unit. His name was Kelly Seipel. Kelly Seipel was a buck sergeant. The pictures on the back are the actual size when he made them. They weren't photographs that I took and blew up. When he gave a copy to myself and a copy to the pilot, that's the actual size. On one side of the plane is the pilot's name. On the other side of the plane is my name. And then the lower picture down there is a group shot of the pilots who were on active duty while I was there. So I'll get you some close-ups of those photos as I go along. But I want to make a series of short videos and talk about my experiences from 1971 to 1972. Now, I am also going to show you that some of these things are not in the history books, and I have the history books. I'm a part-time historian. I have the history of the United States Air Force, and the things that I'm about to tell you are not in the books. But there are a few videos that have surfaced on YouTube, and I'll try and get you a link to those, that talk about the organization that I was in, which was the 8th Special Operations Squadron, flying A-37Bs out of Bien Hoa Air Base, which was located in South Vietnam. It took many years for these things to start to appear. I think one of the things that helped to bring some of these things to the public was Lieutenant Michael Blassie. His last name, I believe, was Blassie, and I'm also going to do a video on that. But Michael Blassie died May the 11th, 1972, during the Battle of An Loc. His remains were not recovered until 1975. His name is on the Vietnam Wall. So Michael Blassie's remains were recovered in 1975, but there wasn't much left. A few bone fragments, part of his flight suit uniform, his pistol. And the reason being is he crashed in 1972, and it took 3 years for them to find it, and that's because the war was still going on until 1975. Michael Blassie was shot down by enemy fire, which I'll be giving a full description of that as I get into these videos. But in the late 1990s, well, first I have to tell you that that Lieutenant Blassie, his remains were placed in the tomb of the unknown soldier. And then in the late 90s, through DNA testing, and I don't know anything about DNA testing, but it was finally determined that these fragments that he found were, in fact, from Lieutenant Michael Blassie. So in the late 90s, there was a newspaper article and a news article talking about Michael Blassie coming out of the tomb of the unknown soldier and going into a final burial place. Now, what's interesting about that is you won't find any mention of the 8th Special Operations Squadron in any of the news medias. Only in the last few years have a few small videos appeared. And I never fully understood why. I'm going to tell you what I think. And here's how it started. In 1971, I received orders to go to South Vietnam, and the orders only took me as far as Cam Ranh Bay. So I arrived in Cam Ranh Bay December 31, 1971, and when I gave my orders to the officer on duty, he said, just go out there and find a hooch, that's just a little building, grab a bunk, and be prepared to stay a few days. After a couple of days of going back and forth to the officer on duty, they told me that I was going to go to Phan Rang, and they put me a new set of orders and put me on a plane and sent me to Phan Rang. Now, Phan Rang was just another stopping off point. You can look up Phan Rang on the internet. So I was at Phan Rang several days, and again, I kept checking with the duty officers. And after a few days, they gave me orders to go to Bien Hoa. And I was told that my unit was in Bien Hoa, but they didn't tell me what my unit was. So in a couple of days after New Year's, I don't remember, it was early in January of 1971, I landed in Bien Hoa. I was taken to one of the dormitories, which were built in World War II, and said, grab a bunk and unpack, put your stuff in the locker, and we're going to take you down to the flight line. Now, I was a crew chief on fighter bombers. Took me down to the flight line, and I was introduced to Sergeant Stevens, Master Sergeant Stevens. He was the flight chief, and I was introduced to the A-37B. I didn't know that existed. But here's my point so far. My orders were blank until I went from one spot to another. My orders were blank. I didn't know where I was going. As it turns out, most of the people that I ended up being stationed with, and some of them were familiar faces, their orders were the same way. They received blank orders to go to South Vietnam, and they ended up in the 8th Special Operations Squadron and the A-37Bs. And again, I'm going to provide more information. I'm going to tell this story that I've been wanting to tell for a long time. And I want to make a series of short videos. This is the first one. Let me shut this off, and I'll see you after a while and tell you some more. And I'll try not to leave out too many details. Now, I'm going to tell you, there's not going to be any AI. There's not going to be any hype. I'm just going to tell you what I experienced and some of the things that I saw in 1972, stationed at Bien Hoa Air Base in South Vietnam. If you happen to be one of those veterans that was there, leave something in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe. I like people to like me. What's not to like, right?